Good morning, everyone. This is Michele Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. I have a very special guest today. We've been talking for a few months, and I've been following what he does. He's all over the internet, so you can easily find him. His name is Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, and he lives in Scottsdale, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and well, there's so much I can say about him. I'm going to let him take over, but welcome to Ageless and Timeless, Dr. Balduzzi. We're really, really happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. And I'd like to start off by paying you a genuine compliment. As I've gotten to know you over the last few months, I think that you truly embody ageless and timeless in who
Uh,
you are, in particular, the timelessness. I really appreciate your professionalism, how you carry yourself. There's just a certain aura you have about you that you don't find very often in people made from the generations today. So,
well,
bravo.
that's the best news and the nicest compliment I've had in a while. So, and I get a lot of nice compliments because people are very validating. But we're all out here to on a journey, and I think it's really important to express who we are from our hearts and to do something, take action, because this is what your program is all about. It's one thing to have an idea, oh, I want to improve or I want to be healthier or whatever, but it's the next thing is to actually do something about it. So we're going to go through that today, and we're going to try to convert a few people who are sitting on the sidelines. And I just want to, all full transparency, Dr. Balduzzi has offered me the challenge, even though I'm maybe higher up on the food chain from the normal starting point, but everybody can always learn. So the challenge is for me to join his program. You don't have to be a mother to be a fit mother. We established that very clearly. So you can just be anyone who wants to, female or male, who wants to improve their health and wellness journey and to do something about what most people are struggling with is just the fitness level, the nutrition level, stress level. Well, I can't, I guess I'm saying everything about living in the world today. I was really interested yesterday when I saw on the internet that finally, after I don't know how many years, the government, the FTC, finally has banned red dye. And it's frustrating in one way that it's taken them so long, but it's so heartening that it's being done. And there are those all the other additives that food additives that hopefully are going to follow. Hopefully, if Robert F. Kennedy gets
Hmm.
nominated, that will expedite. But what did you think about that news?
I think it's a great win. I mean, for those that are not familiar, Red 3 is a dye that just got banned in food products, but
Yeah,
it's been banned in cosmetics for over 30 years. And I think one of the interesting discrepancies in the United States is there are so many additives, colorings, preservatives, and products that are in our foods that
yeah,
aren't in the same foods that are marketed in other countries. Like the stuff that's allowed in McDonald's manufacturing in the United States is different than what they allow in Europe. And so,
right.
like, I think it's just a big wake up call. And this is how change happens. We have problems that build up a certain amount of pressure, and then there's awareness that grows. And we've hit a tipping point now in this country. And the data is so clear. I mean, we go back to like 1910, the obesity rate was around 5%. Now, 70% of Americans are overweight or obese.
I
Like,
know,
and that's in a 100-year span,
I know.
right? And so it's like not that our bodies physiologically change that much in this time. It's we're living in an environment that has ultra processed foods, high stress, light and circadian rhythm has been dysregulated, and we're suffering. At the same time, we want to do better, and there's a lot of information that's conflicting. So I am grateful to be in the position I am, which is a guide and a support to help people cut through the noise and gain traction with healthy habits for themselves and their families. And my intention is that our conversation today shares some practical tips and some motivation and philosophy that will get people moving in the right direction this new year.
And that's a very appropriate word, moving, because that's a big part of what we're talking about in terms of improving our wellness and our fitness is moving.
Yes.
Those of us who have been couch potatoes, that is going to change after today.
Mhm.
Everybody's going to be inspired. So, well, the other thing that I'm kind of jumping forward, but I want to be sure that I don't forget to cover. We just have to ban glyphosate.
Yes.
Don't understand how this can go on with all the science behind the damages it's doing to our health. Why are we not taking action and banning that terrible product? Maybe you can explain just.
I'd love to. I think it's a very valuable conversation. And I think of the things that we have in our food system that we agree are quote unquote toxins that are harming health, glyphosate, which is also known as Roundup, which is sprayed on genetically modified crops to help them grow and not have as much pests, is one of the most harmful things in our modern food supply that's probably led to a vast majority of the problems. In fact, this big explosion of people who are now celiac or gluten sensitive, a lot of it has to do with the glyphosate, and not that they actually have necessarily problems with wheat. So here's the story here. Over the last, I say 150 years, we've done a lot to wheat, which is a food that humans have eaten for a long time. We started to genetically modify it to make it hybridized so it could grow and have higher yields. And in the process, we changed the genetics of ancient wheat strains. So if you go to restaurants that are healthy, you might find ancient grains, which is a catch-all term for things like einkorn, spelt, farro. These are wheats that have much simpler genetics that humans have been eating for thousands and thousands of years. Well, we genetically modified those. We made them resistant to this pesticide called Roundup. But Roundup and glyphosate is not just a pesticide, it's also a desiccant. A desiccant is something that dries things. So it's used in the processing of wheat when they want to get it ready. They can spray glyphosate on it after harvest to actually dry it out, and it helps in the manufacturing process. The problem is, our bodies, as we know them, are a complete constellation and ecosystem of all sorts of different kinds of bacteria that we have a symbiotic relationship with. So when we eat things with glyphosate, the first thing it does is it goes into our digestive tract and really wrecks our microbiome. It creates a lot of stress and pressures. And we know that health does start in the digestive tract. And if we have inflammation in the digestive tract, what happens secondary to that is we can have leaky gut, which is where those formerly tight junctions in our intestinal tract become porous and inflamed. And then stuff leaks into the bloodstream, and then the immune system responds and reacts to that. So it is my personal opinion, having looked at the data and helped so many people, that a huge rise in a lot of these autoimmune conditions we have, which have exploded, is a lot because we're eating inflammatory stuff in the digestive tract. But if that was just the story right there with glyphosate, that would already be bad enough, but it gets worse. Our mitochondria, which we know are like the secret to health, is to have healthy, thriving mitochondria. Ultimately, all metabolism in the foods we eat, we chop it up into small components and it gets into the mitochondria. And then we make ATP, which our cells actually use for energy. Our mitochondria are of bacterial origin. And we now know that glyphosate harms your mitochondria because, it blocks something called the shikimate pathway that bacteria use, and it just wrecks your mitochondria. And so it's going to age you faster. It's going to lead to neurodegenerative conditions. There's also some research showing that glyphosate harms the interior lining of your blood vessels, the glycocalyx that is really essential for how your blood flows properly. And when our blood vessels are inflamed, we lay down cholesterol plaques, which is a precursor to heart disease. So it's also connected. And I suspect that glyphosate will be banned sometime in the next 5-10 years in the United States. But it goes to show, we have a food system that is driven by a lot of corporate interest and a lot of money. Monsanto is a massive company. There's a ton of lobbying. And now we have enough pressure and critical mass of awareness that stuff is going to start to shift.
I hope you're right. I really do, because we have such a deplorable record of being the highest healthcare costs and
right.
lowest in our performance as far as healthcare. What would you say? Accreditation, or
yes.
So there's another one that kind of it does bother me, and I need to talk to you about this because I watched a lot of your videos. And there were two. One is tofu, and the other one is coffee.
Yes.
Can you talk about both of those? Because tofu has such a controversial profile, and you can explain why, and then why do you recommend it? And then coffee, of course, also acidic. And for people who are, most people are already acidic, and coffee can really hurt their digestive tract. So go ahead and talk to us about those two items, just so people understand the pros and cons of putting those in their diet, particularly if they're following your Fit Mother and Father project.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing to talk about nutrition is it's we have the tendency to want to speak in black and white, like these foods are categorically good or categorically bad, where we have a lot of bio-individual difference of foods that work better for some people and not. That has to do with our gut microbiome, some genetic SNPs that make us able to process things differently for different people. And I say that because there are certain people that will eat soy-based products that will inherently feel worse. They will feel bloating, they will have issues, they'll feel lethargy. And if you eat any food, soy on the side, that makes you feel bloated and causes your poop to be dysregulated, that is a food that your microbiome and your body is not going to work. And it is each of our jobs from a personal power responsibility standpoint to start to pay more attention and zone in on the foods that uniquely work well for us. And for a lot of people, soy is something that they don't tolerate well. But there's a lot of different kinds of soy, and it's not enough just to say soy is bad. One of the big narratives out there from people who are in the very much animal-based diet camp is that soy is an estrogenic food because it has these things called soy isoflavones that bind to estrogen receptors in the body, but they're weak binders to estrogen. So in truth, they're actually kind of alterative, meaning for people with high estrogen, taking isoflavones can actually lower estrogen levels in the sense that they're binding to those receptors and competing with estrogen. For people with low estrogen, it can actually raise them a little bit. And the point of soy is actually the actual name of the plant is glycine. I think glycine max is what it's abbreviated as. And glycine, it is one of the richest sources of this amino acid glycine that is very good for cognitive health and is associated with longevity. So there may be some benefits to soy, but I'll say this, non-organic soy is heavily sprayed with pesticides. I personally do not feel good when I eat just like regular tofu, but I feel fantastic when I eat fermented soy like tempeh or natto. And I eat tempeh regularly. It is a completely different experience for my body. And of the plant-based proteins, soy is actually one of the best from a protein bioavailability standpoint, because you could look on like a can of beans and it says, oh, it has 8 grams of protein per cup, but not all that protein is nearly as bioavailable as some animal-based proteins, but soy protein is quite good from that standpoint. And reviewing the research, as long as you're not going absolutely overboard. I think there have been some case studies of people having estrogenic effects of soy, but there were people drinking like a gallon of soy milk a day. Like that's just not like a reasonable thing to do. But if you're incorporating tempeh or natto, which is a traditional fermented soybean product, into your diet, I think that your health will enhance. But again, the blanket statement is if you're not feeling good on it, then it's not for you.
Today's podcast is brought to you by International Anti-Aging Systems and Profound Health. The founder, Phil Mickens, has been a guest on Ageless and Timeless, and those who know him personally, as I am so fortunate to do, can attest to his knowledge, experience, authenticity, and his passion to help make the world a better place with a commitment to work profoundly to improve our health. I personally have used the peptide bioregulators, some of his hormones, and his skincare products, and I can attest to their efficacy. If you want those unique and value-added evidence-based health products, then IAS and Profound Health are your number one resource. We're going to flash on the screen the different websites that you can use in order to order their products. And no matter which website you go to and which products you order, please use the Ageless code for a 15% discount. Yeah, and obviously the fermented foods are a category in the nutritional complex that we want to be sure we've included. So that is kombucha, tempeh,
Krauts, sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, miso. Yeah.
Miso's got a pretty high sodium level, so I think some people have to stay away from that if they have any kind of heart issues. But
great point, but could be used as a salt substitute in a recipe. If you are already going to add salt anyways, you could substitute miso and you get a little fermented aspect. But yes, I think everyone should get a best in slot probiotic on a daily basis. And just because we're talking about this, I will share the ones that me and my family do regularly. I always have some sauerkraut in a glass jar in my fridge, and I'll throw it on a salad. If I have dinner or any animal protein, I'll throw a little bit of that. And I also make my own kefir, which is an ancient grains yogurt. I don't do well with dairy. I've been lactose intolerant since birth, but I also have a sensitivity to the milk proteins. So I make a coconut kefir. I have the kefir grains, I feed them, and I have that every day, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I call it kefir, but that kefir it sounds a little more exotic. So,
One of us is right. I don't have no idea.
right. I always buy it at Whole Foods
Nice.
or Good Earth here because they have the A21, where the milk lactose is removed or minimized. So I don't think I'm lactose intolerant, but I always feel like milk is not good, particularly if it's not from grass-fed cows. So
Can I speak to you about that? Because I think
yeah,
it's a nice nuance. Dairy is an interesting subject. When people think when they have a sensitivity, they're thinking like lactose intolerance, but that's actually not the issue. Lactose is the milk sugar.
yeah,
And some people lack the lactase enzyme that breaks it down.
yeah,
Very prevalent in Asians, people from Africa,
right,
basically like white and Europeans who did a lot of like cows and milk tend to tolerate the milk sugar better. But that
yeah,
is different than having a sensitivity to the dairy protein, which
yeah,
is milk protein is made of casein and whey. This is what it's made of. And cows that are not A2 cows, it's a genetic strain of the cows that produce an A2 casein. A2 casein comes from A2 cows, also from sheep, also from goat. It tends to be a lot less allergenic. People feel better when they have it. And
yeah,
so goat's cheese, sheep's cheese,
yeah,
A2 cows, and maybe even exploring some raw dairy tends to be good. But I'll say this, if you eat a food and it makes you have mucus production afterwards,
yeah.
your immune system is stimulated by it. So any food. For me, it's weird. Like citrus, not all citrus, but oranges. They make my throat scratchy. I get mucus production. My body and my immune system says this is not a food that we want. So you just got to kind of figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
Dairy, if you can tolerate it, massively health promoting. But you want to get organic, ideally A2. But if it's not for you, then you shouldn't have it in your diet regularly.
And always better to get the plain. And if you want to add your own berries or whatever, but
Yes.
the other ones have sugar in them. And that's why I go to Trader Joe's, I can never buy their kefir there because except for the plain, that even the plain, I think had some, well, the plain is not an A21, but yeah. So I think people need to know that it's just like with yogurt. The yogurts, 90% of the yogurts out there are full of sugar. And
Yes.
so when you're buying yogurt, even the Greek yogurts have sugar.
Yes.
So I always try to buy like the grass-fed cows for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got one now that I found at Costco actually. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to get it for you, but it's lactose free.
Nice.
Yeah, and organic and grass-fed cows. So all three of those. Now, oh, you know what?
Coffee. Can I talk about coffee?
Let's go to
Okay.
yeah,
Before I say that, I think the underlying context of what we're sharing so far in this conversation is we have a mindset that we formerly used to have culturally, that it was this idea of this dieting mindset, like certain things are bad or off the table. What we're talking about today is upgrading your and your family's best in slot items. Okay, dairy, get the best kind. Okay, a probiotic, get the best kind. Wheat, get the best kind. Organic sourdough, ancient grains. Just
right,
upgrade your best in slot items, and then you can still have the things that your family enjoys. You're just using from better ingredients.
right,
And also, I think that's how change happens. Like we're talking about the glyphosate, things move with financial pressure and interest from people. When people stop buying the wheat products that are not organic, that puts pressure on these companies. It stresses their supply chains and their manufacturing, their projections. Then they start to make changes. So public interest and then purchasing behavior ultimately feeds back over time to companies who will make changes because they want to make money ultimately. Now, on the coffee thing, it's interesting. There's a lot of nuance here. I think if you look at some of the research, it shows that people who drink coffee tend to have slightly longer lives and stuff like this. Here's my general take on it. For a long, healthy life, you want to have a balance of your nervous system. And caffeine and coffee being the main stimulant that people use stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. It brings you out of parasympathetic into sympathetic, increases heart rate, increases blood pressure. That can be helpful as a pre-workout. It's shown that caffeine can be helpful to give you a little bit of a boost, can improve endurance, time to fatigue, a little bit of mental sharpness. But I think predominantly for a long and healthy life, you want to be controlling your stress and keeping yourself in parasympathetic. In the United States, probably people use too many stimulants. I personally do not drink coffee. I have green tea or fermented tea on occasion. I use raw heirloom ceremonial grade cacao, which has a little bit of caffeine with some other, more natural stimulant, not a natural, but good stimulants. But I don't think coffee is inherently bad or unhealthy if it's in moderation and balance. And a lot of people, it's part of their morning ritual. And I think it can be totally compatible with health, but you just want to be aware. Are you at the point where you're having like going back to coffee more than 2 times a day, like 3 times a day? Like a cup, totally fine. I don't think your health will change too much. 2, 3, 4 cups, like I think we're getting into the point where you're relying on external stimulants to give you energy. And the kind of energy that coffee gives you is kind of like a fake propped up energy. It's not real cellular energy. It's a temporary block of some signals in your brain that would signal you were tired. It blocks some adenosine receptors in the brain. And there's often a crash associated with that. Some people find that if they blend their coffee up like bulletproof style and mix in some MCT oil, maybe a little bit grass-fed butter or ghee, it tends to like smooth out the coffee by providing it with some fats and kind of like micellizing it, and it tends to be a little time release. I'm okay with that as an option. I think coffee is okay to have. It is slightly acidic, but those caffeic acids and the different things in there actually do have some health benefits, and they are kind of antioxidants. So sadly, for the standard American diet, some of the greatest antioxidants that people get in their diet is actually coming from coffee and the phenols in coffee. And that's not saying that coffee is that phenomenally healthy. It's just more like we're not eating enough fruits and vegetables to get it from other sources.
I love what you're saying. And I just remembered that I sent you an email about seed oils yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And you sent me a really great response. So let's go over the seed oils. That came from a friend of mine in Canada that email original about the link to the seed. Suddenly people are realizing seed oils are bad for you. And so I was kind of humored by it because she doesn't really know that much more about my how much I do on my podcast and how aware I am of all these things. But when I reached out to you, I actually even learned more. Okay. The only thing I asked you about, and we'll talk about in a moment, those 3 that were on her list and on your list. So why don't you delve into omega-3s and omega-6s and the impact that seed oils have on those nutrients?
Would love to. Very important topic. And I'd love to take even a step higher and frame it in a deeper conversation. There are 3 main macronutrients we get from food: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Right. When we're discussing oils, we are talking in the fat category. Right. But to quickly back up into the other 2, protein, what we currently know is you should be trying to get more, especially from a longevity perspective. Yes. Higher protein diets are very good for preserving muscle mass. They're good for energy. You want to get high quality proteins in whatever way you get them, and try to get it from the cleanest sources. We won't go further into it than that, but just more protein, higher protein diets is pretty much the general recommendation today for fitness, body composition, longevity. Carbohydrates, we know we want to avoid the ultra processed carbs, certainly anything sprayed with glyphosate. We want to be getting carbs from like natural sources that don't bloat us. Fruits, vegetables, maybe some complex carbs. I like purple sweet potatoes. I do eat a lot of fruit and different kind of veg. And then I think it's fine to like keep your carbs on the lower side, but I do not believe you need to be on some ultra low carb restricted diet. Your diet would probably be better if you had things like blueberries in there, an occasional purple potato in there. You could have quinoa at dinner once in a while. Like that's okay. It's not like it needs to be 0 carb. But now fats are really interesting because this is where there's like categorically fats that are so healthy and healing for you. And there are some that are actually like quite damaging. And there's subcategories inside fats, and fats can be categorized into many, many compounds. There's saturated fats, which we find in animal products. And in the right amount, they can have some health benefits. We do benefit from some saturated fat. I think like a super high saturated fat intake is not great, but we've seen a reverse cultural trend where it used to be, we want to have as low saturated fat as possible. And then we found out that a lot of that data was actually skewed. So now people are like, let's get just tons of butter. Butter is a massive health food. Let's get tons of saturated fat from red meat. I'm going to have a ribeye 3 times per day. My personal take on the research is it's all about balance. There's a certain amount of saturated fat that is helpful. I eat egg yolks. I have some butter and grass-fed and ghee. It's a part of my diet, but you keep it in moderation because more is not better. And there is a problem, in my opinion, with having too much saturated fat. Now, when we're talking about seed oils, we are talking about unsaturated fats. They're different and unsaturated, meaning, it's more of like chemical, the structure of the fat that makes it unsaturated or saturated. But these are coming from nuts and seeds and oils and things like this. And the seed oils are the common ones. You'll see canola oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil. And oftentimes these are cheaper oils that we see in a lot of ultra processed foods. These are in most of the packaged foods and goods. If you look at salad dressings, boxed chips, crackers, condiments, they're pretty much all have these kinds of oils on there. And these are high in a kind of fat called omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 fatty acids are essential for us. We need them. In fact, if you look at something healthy like a walnut has around 30 to 40% omega-6 fatty acids. In concert with a lot of other amazing things and some omega-3s, there's a balance. The problem is we have a diet that's very low, the standard American is very low in omega-3s that we get from flax seeds, from hemp seeds, from fish in different formats. And we want enough omega-3s. Omega-3s are typically anti-inflammatory. They're good for heart health. They're good for brain health. We're not getting enough of those. And we've had a ton of these processed foods that are high in omega-6. Omega-6s can be converted in the body to pro-inflammatory compounds. There are these things, omega-6s turn into this thing called arachidonic acid, and they work in this COX pathway. In fact, the reason that Advil works when you take it is it blocks the COX inflammatory pathway that the omega-6s feed. So just to kind of wrap your head around how all these things work. When we eat too much omega-6 without enough omega-3, we create an environment in our cells in our body that can be inflammatory. And so right now, the environment is there's a ton of health influencers screaming seed oils are the cause of all problems. And actually, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. It's that people who are eating ultra processed diets with high omega-6 and not enough omega-3 are having heart issues or having health issues or having diabetes and inflammation. And there is a stress in the body. But just because you have a little bit of like grapeseed oil that you cooked with in a wild salmon that has some omega-3s, like that probably actually doesn't have a big impact on your health. It's not like every time you insert a seed oil into your body, you're automatically creating inflammation. It's a little more nuanced than that. That being said, I still do not use seed oils as my baseline oil in my house. When I'm cooking high heat, I typically use avocado oil or ghee, which is a clarified butter. Animal fats like tallow can be fine as well if you'd like to use those. I use extra virgin olive oil from a glass bottle, single source country as a drizzle on to a lot of different foods because that's an oil that is massively healthy. And I'm not pouring canola oil on things, but if you go out to a restaurant and they're probably going to cook one of your things in seed oils once in a while, you're going to be okay, in my opinion. It's just your daily basis. You don't want to be using those potentially inflammatory seed oils. And then the other side is get omega-3s in your diet. Hemp seeds, you put those on salads and in smoothies. Flax, if you like that. Wild sardines or herring or wild salmon. Get those omega-3s. A grass-fed, like pasture-raised egg yolk that has all the orange has some omega-3s. Get more omega-3s is part of the story.
And in the beef, it should be grass-fed and grass-finished.
Yes.
People forget to ask for that. They say, oh, is this grass-fed beef? But the grass-finished is really important because that means that cow has never fed anything but grass, right? That they're not going to be injected with hormones. They're not going to be eating corn and soy and all those things that you just talked about. So that's an important one. And then the other thing is the high flash point oils that you just...
Yes.
So, I always used to cook with olive oil, and then I read and studied that olive oil cannot take a high flash point. And yet I know 90% of my friends who cook with oils cook with olive oil.
Yeah.
They're doing a great thing for their health, and they might even cook at a high heat. So it's important to know that it would be better to use your olive oil for drizzling. Use it on salad dressings. Use it for drizzling over the cooked food.
Yes.
Don't cook with it, but the MCT oil or the coconut oil and the avocado oil are two that will take the high flash point.
Yes.
Until I talked to you, I thought grapeseed oil was okay. And so
it is a high heat oil. And dare I say, because it is such a high heat oil, it would potentially even be healthier in small amounts to coat a pan and fry something on high heat than using something like an olive oil that would get denatured above 375 Fahrenheit or whatever.
Yeah, and it exposes free radicals to the body. So it's not...
And that's it. That's the story. And I think that's important to understand. It's like fats exposed to high heat
Yeah.
get transformed. They
Yeah.
become compounds that are stressful for our bodies. Like this term free radical is thrown around, and we don't need to get into the chemistry, but it basically stresses your cells, creates
Right.
damage to your cell membranes, can damage your mitochondria. We do not want free radical production. It's actually one of the hallmarks of aging is free radical damage. And so don't heat your fats at high heat that shouldn't be heated.
And let's move on to something else that's really important. And I mean, we've really covered some very, very important topics, and we've isolated some of those things that may not always come out first round of your Fit Mother and Fit Father project, because you do talk in generalities in the beginning because you want to get people a framework
Yes.
how to move forward. But these are the very specific things that
Mm-hmm.
people can apply. That many of our viewers are way, way, way up in the trans. Let's call it the transition from eating a bad diet to a good diet.
Mm-hmm.
Very knowledgeable, and they want only to get better. They all, and so we're talking about some of the finite things.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I meant to say in that same subject on seed oils that I think ghee is a really great addition, and that
Me
avocado
too.
mayonnaise, and they now have both of those at Costco.
Avocado mayo is great.
Got avocado oil there because mayonnaise because it was in a plastic jar. So I waited and went to the Good Earth, and but they had the Primal brand, and the
Mm-hmm.
Primal brand also was in a heavier plastic. I think maybe BPA free,
Yeah.
but I was surprised that there wasn't one in a glass jar. I have to go to Whole Foods and see if they have one.
Mm-hmm.
But avocado mayonnaise, definitely get rid of your mayonnaise, the old
Yes.
one, even if it says cage free, because cage free is meaningless. But
It's meaningless because it's still made with canola oil and sunflower oil. Your salad dressings, 90% of them are using a seed oil, which again is just more omega 6 than you probably want. Don't add omega 6s to your diet. You're
yeah,
going to find them naturally in healthy foods in the right balanced amount. It's the fact that we have all these excessive omega 6s. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Well, and also the making a vinaigrette, which I do in a mason jar. It's
Nice.
simple. I mean, all you do
So
is
easy.
take and use apple cider vinegar if you can.
Yes.
Red red wine vinegar because it's much healthier for you.
Mm-hmm.
And just take the kind of olive oil you described, which I think is another whole subject about that
Yes.
you need to be aware of. That olive oil, 90% of it is tainted. So you
Yes.
really do need to be very discerning when you pick your olive oil and make sure it's extra virgin, first cold pressed, or
Yes.
and single source country.
Yes.
And I mean, those, I know it sounds like a big challenge, but they're there. And
Glass bottle
glass
too.
bottle,
Glass bottle, single source, cold pressed, organic. That's if you
yeah,
find that, it's worth spending more. Like there's some things you
yeah,
can cut corners on from a cost perspective. Olive oil is one of those things is just so healthy and good for you that just get the best in slot there.
yeah. And what I do with the vinaigrette is after I use that, find that really good olive oil, which I've found the right ones, and everybody can do the same thing. Just takes a little extra effort. Italian tends to be a little higher quality by their history. However, now the Spanish and the Greek,
Yeah.
they're all come up, and of course the California
Yeah.
also. But just make sure that if you can get first cold press, because that means those olives haven't been sitting around, and they go down the line to the third or fourth pressing of the olives that you're getting.
Yeah. Which then the whole point is the same discussion we had with seed oils that at high heat, they become rancid.
Yeah,
These precious fats become rancid, then they become toxic byproducts.
yeah,
Same thing with fish oil supplements.
yeah,
Like fish oil supplements are omega 3s that can oxidize really easily. So it's
right.
better to go really high quality, refrigerated, liquid style supplements. But quite frankly, I'm not even supplementing with omega 3s anymore. I'm eating sardines and herring and actually getting it from food based sources a couple times a week.
Yeah, I have yet to be able to stomach eating a sardine. I know a lot of people and herring. I know my mother when we were kids used to try to feed us all that. And I think that was probably the reason that it became so anathema to.
Yeah.
I just cannot. It's just like oysters and clams. I just cannot get them. But that's just me. I mean, a lot of people, they love uh,
Hmm.
kinds of raw fish. But anyway, back to the vinaigrette, just one more second. And then what I
Hmm.
do is I add a little mustard powder or
Yes.
Dijon mustard and some, lightly salt and pepper. And if I have fresh herbs in my garden, I might throw some things in.
Nice.
So, and then I put that jar is in your fridge. You have no excuse. And you, guess
Hmm.
what? You're going to save a lot of money too.
Yes,
Not buying uh, uh, regular salad dressing. So, all right, well, let's move on because I wanted, there's so much I want to cover with you, Anthony. We could talk for hours,
for
but
sure.
um, okay, so the next thing is let's talk about how the Fit Mother and Fit Father project evolved and what are the highlights. I know it would take you another 2 hours to talk about the depth of the program, but give us some highlights of what to expect if people want to join your program.
Well, we've talked a lot about nutrition, and I think nutrition is a dance between the specifics that we're talking about. Like you need to understand these specifics, but also have like a daily plan that you can work, which means you have a meal timing schedule that you know works for you. You figure out some go-to meals that are really convenient for breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner, or whatever framework you're eating on. Nutrition is one massive pillar because it's the wheel that we're turning every day that keeps us very consistent. And nutrition can be something that's either nourishing or poisonous. So it's one of the big pillars in the program, but there's many pillars that I believe lead to great health. Other pillars that we address in the program are hydration, sleep, exercise, accountability. So this is like the whole kind of like we basically help you install systems in each of these so it feels like it's your health routine that will work long term. So practically speaking, we help you develop the meal plan that works. We give you recipes, nutrition training, and you gain a lot of clarity and momentum on this front. Exercise wise, we help you become consistent with a combination of the three types of exercise that I believe are important for longevity. One is strength training for the muscle mass, for the bone health, particularly important in your 40s and 50s. There's probably not a single thing that will support your hormone health and your bone health as much as regular strength training. So we find a way to like do that. We give you amazing strength training workouts you can do with a pair of free weights at home, all the different kinds of modifications for any injuries that someone may have. We help you do some cardiovascular training for your health and your heart, as well as some mobility and flexibility. And we've just created these fun workouts that are geared for people over 40. The whole community does them together. We release a new weekly workout schedule every week with follow along videos. We have personal trainers and doctors in the community who are helping people with form. And there's just this really fun together energy because everyone's training together. So it's basically the program is a personal trainer in your pocket paired with the nutrition, paired with the accountability because all the people doing the program together are in the app, able to post and communicate. So there's this really exciting together energy. And I want to stress this because a lot of people who get unhealthy, they put themselves in isolation. They say, you know, I'm really busy. They get sucked into their schedule, into their excuses, and they don't connect with other people who are healthy and like-minded. When you do that, it elevates you. It elevates your mindset and your accountability. So we build that into the program. And we also train on sleep and stress regulation, as well as how to properly hydrate from both foods and using minerals. And so it's just like a holistic lifestyle plan that we help someone deploy through a focused 6-week period at first, and then sustain on an ongoing basis, keeping it really fresh and engaged. So it's been 10 years of work to build it to the point that it is. There's been many program iterations, and it's just a really powerful place for people who come, who want to learn, take their health and fitness to the next level, whether that means actually losing the weight, getting off medications and doing that initial push, or you're more advanced and you just want to plug into something that takes you to the next level. We have tens of thousands of people on our program across Fit Mother and Fit Father. They're seeing amazing results.
You know, you are a man with a mission, and I did read about how you came to this. It's interesting because I'll just abbreviate this so you can talk about it. But um, I have found in my interviews, and this is now I'm in my sixth year of this podcast, so I've interviewed a lot of people like you. But I have found that probably 70 or 80% of the people that are there, doctors, professionals, people like us, you know, that are just passionate about wellness, have come to this space through a tragedy, through something cataclysmic in our lives that turned us
Mm-hmm.
into people that were in pursuit of
Mm-hmm.
solutions. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about how that happened with you?
For sure. I was looking back, it's a gift, but it absolutely was a tragedy at the time. My childhood was really shaped by the fact that my father was diagnosed with a preventable cancer, and I watched him battle that basically my whole childhood, and he ended up dying when he was 42 years old, and I was just before my 10th birthday, so 9 years old. And Absolutely devastating, to have our family go through that much stress, to see the pain of my dad who had two young kids and a wife, and to see him like have to finally release and recognize that he couldn't fight this anymore. And then our family struggling to hold it all together. I mean, seeing the stress on my mom now as like single mom, provider, having to take care of us, and how much her health kind of got derailed in the process of the grieving and the keeping our family together. But for me, the gift was I just got so sick of being sad of that first 1 to 2 years. I had so much pain and emotional angst. I needed to get it out. And I think intuitively, I just started exercising. My mom gave me a pair of my dad's old dumbbells, and I would have this little ritual where at night after she tucked me in, I'd pull them out, put on my little CD player, and like do some exercises at night. And what was amazing to me is I realized that it was the only thing that made me feel better. Like all the emotional processing was kind of happening. And when I started exercising, I was able to channel that pain and fire in some productive direction that was starting to get me stronger. And as I got stronger, I started to like emotionally heal. And I created stories at the time that I wanted to become so strong that cancer wouldn't affect me. I wanted to become big to help take care of my little brother and become more influential. And I also recognized I felt this void of this kind of masculine leadership energy from my dad. And I think I was trying to fill that by building myself up. And the beauty of that is it got me passionate about health and fitness since I was 10 years old. So in the late stages of middle school and in high school, I would pack my lunchbox with all my healthy foods. I would get up a couple hours before school and do my meal prep. I carried around a gallon of water, which was like unheard of at the time decades ago. There was no Instagram or stuff like that. I was just like on a mission to try to get my body healthier and build myself up into something that I felt like was significant, and also in a direction of the exact opposite what I saw my dad go through, which is debilitating health. And that passion morphed into fitness. I got into athletics and into competitive bodybuilding, and I really learned how to dial this stuff into to create tangible changes to the body, like fat loss and muscle building, which is part of the health equation. But we also know there's a lot of fitness people that look great, but they're not necessarily healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got into naturopathic medicine to understand the fundamentals of natural health and living and the medical background of this, and how health is so much deeper than just physical fitness or looking good. It's understanding a lot of these lifestyle rhythms. And all along, I'm developing this program that would help someone a lot like my dad and my mom in the middle and the chaos of life, wanting to do better, lots of stresses and pressures. How do you make this all practical? How do you actually get results? And, there's so many facets that led to building it, but that's effectively how this all came to be. And I've been doing this for over 10 years now, professionally helping parents and non-parents in these programs, Fit Father and Fit Mother. And the reason I called them Fit Father and Fit Mother, even though they're not exclusively for parents, is I recognize that in the United States, we have unhealthy families, and families are like these little cells of culture. And I believe if we're going to make change, we need to make change in like these units and create leverage change for the next generation. And my thinking is that if I can help someone like my dad or my mom get healthy and they can pass that culture on to their kids, we can hedge and actually do preventative medicine for the next generation instead of doing what a lot of us are doing right now, is like unwinding years and years of bad habits because we're waking up now, waking up after the pre-diabetes diagnosis, waking up after a heart attack, or just feeling like crap. I think we can actually have preventative medicine where health is baked into the culture of families, and then maybe even with this new administration into the culture of our nation.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time to be alive and to be doing this work.
And we have technology today that we didn't.
Yes.
That I think is one of the biggest advantages going forward. That AI and DNA and
Yes.
stem cells and all the things that are now giving us tools. There's tools that are based in science,
Yes.
and so those basic programs that you develop with people then can be built on. And then in that
Mhm.
vein, let's talk about supplements. Can you give us some examples of supplements that you approve of, because people get really blindsided about supplements. Supplements are, unregulated. I'm not advocating that they be regulated because our FDA is kind of questionable about what they approve and don't approve.
Yeah.
Like we talked about the red dye issue. But let's talk about what you believe are supplements that people could today, after this program, and they are now all revved up and inspired, could go out and buy.
Well, I think that the first way to answer that question is to actually ask, like, what does the body legitimately need for high functioning?
Right.
And we need micronutrients. We've talked a lot about macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats, but that's only part of the equation. The micronutrients are the vitamins and the minerals that act as the cofactors for all of these processes that happen in the body. So we have this idea that there's these B vitamins that are in certain foods and in certain supplements. Well, the reason those are effective is the B vitamins help our mitochondria do all these processes to create energy. They're needed for metabolism. We have proper B vitamin intake, then we get more energy out of our foods. And the same thing with minerals. We know like sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium, calcium, these macro minerals, but we also have all these trace minerals, iodine for your thyroid gland, boron for your bones and hormone health, selenium for conversion of thyroid hormone for your immune system, for antioxidant capacity. And unfortunately, when we've shifted our last 100 years to ultra processed foods away from fruits and vegetables, and we've depleted our soils from monocropping, we are not getting enough micronutrients from our food. It's estimated that like an apple today has around 30 to 40% less of the nutrition, the micronutrients that it had back in the day. And
Right.
so that's problematic because our body legitimately needs micronutrients. So this is a way to back into the supplements conversation because you do not need supplements if
Yeah.
you have a completely dialed in diet. Like if you joined Fit Mother or Fit Father and you learned the most nutrient rich foods that are rich in B vitamins and you're eating your sardines, you're putting non-fortified nutritional yeast, you're eating egg yolks and, broccoli and wild salmon and grass-fed beef, you could get all the things you need from your diet. That being said, supplements are kind of nice and effective for a lot of busy people who may not have all the variety and might not be super dialed to have like a background baseline, coverage of your micronutrients. So this is where perhaps a whole foods based multivitamin or something that covers your micronutrient bases could be helpful to dial into a couple of those vitamins and micronutrients that are particularly helpful. One would be vitamin D levels. So a lot of people are familiar with taking D. I would recommend a vitamin D3 K2
Correct.
combination supplement. They work really well in concert for specific reasons we don't need to get into. But we need that. And I think if we look at what happened during the pandemic time, the people who had the worst outcomes tended to have the lowest vitamin D status. All
Right.
of your white blood cells have vitamin D receptors. It's important for cognitive function, for bones, for immune health, for hormone health. And most people are pitifully low in vitamin D because we're working inside. We're not getting natural midday sunshine like we once did. And seasonal changes, like sometimes we just don't get enough sun exposure for the proper D. So D3K2 is good.
Right.
The
And
omega, go
that's
ahead.
you should say the reason is that if you just take D3 by itself, the calcium
Yes.
go into the arteries where it doesn't want to be and block
Yes.
the arteries. So the K2 is, and by the way, make sure it's D3 and K2 because those
Yes.
the 3 and the 2 are the forms of those two supplements, those nutrients that we need. And D is actually a hormone.
It is. It's a hormone called a vitamin.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's so it's so essential. And my take is I D3K2 generally good. You can also use it anytime you are feeling sick or run down to do pulses of mega doses. If
Yeah.
you're feeling sick, you can bump up your D3 temporarily to like 20,000, 30,000 IUs. Some
Right.
doctors are even doing 100,000 IU protocols, just like pulsing it. So it's
Yeah.
very safe for long-term use. It's also good whenever you get your blood work done to just have them check your serum vitamin D3 levels
Yeah.
and just make sure they're optimized. And I'll help you dial in the amount that you need because it's one thing to say, take 3,000 to 5,000 IUs a day. Like maybe that's like a fine blanket statement, but getting blood work feedback is so easy and simple that'll help you dial it in. I still get midday sunshine. I still think that is very valuable for many, many reasons. So I aim to do that. And because I live in Arizona, I get the benefit of good sun most of the year.
Yeah. You and I are very lucky. California and Arizona are
Yeah.
certainly conducive to getting our D3 from the sun. And
Okay.
by the way, if you're going out in the sun during that time, do not put on lather on sunscreen because that's defeating the purpose. I know that's contraindicated to what most of the skincare people say, but just for that half hour, you can be out in the sun and let the sun
Yes.
absorb into your skin, and then the rest of the time you can have your sunscreen on.
And we get feedback. We literally have feedback from our skin. You know when you've had too much sun. You know when you've had enough. Sun feels good until it doesn't. The
Yeah.
second you feel any aversion, you're like, uh-oh, too much out. You're gone.
Right.
Your body's literally telling you. And here's the thing. As a naturopathic physician, I understand that health is rooted in the cycles of nature. We're born from this planet. Our bones are made of the minerals that the plants and the animals soaked up that we eat. We're constituted by this, and we need to be in contact with the sun. When we get morning sunshine in the first 3 hours when the sun is up, where the UV is not very much present and it's mostly infrared, that
Yeah.
actually conditions our skin for later in the day to do better with the UV resistance and actually synthesizing vitamin D. So it's not surprising. Humans, just think back thousands of years, we didn't have the modern lifestyle. We had this whole concert. So there's a lot we could say on circadian rhythm and all that. D, we talked about.
Yeah.
Next supplement, I would say, got to get omega-3 source in your diet. I don't
Yeah.
think you necessarily need to supplement with it, but if you do, the old school wisdom of doing something like a liquid cod liver oil that
Yeah.
actually has the A, D, E, has some vitamin K in it as well with the omega-3s is a great solution. I
Yeah.
throw hemp seeds on basically everything. I have wild salmon and sardines a couple times per week, the grass-fed beef and all these things, but omega-3 supplement is just generally helpful because it offsets the omega-6 you're going to get from your diet, and it's good for heart and brain health. It's very well researched and very safe.
Yeah, and be sure to get one that doesn't have mercury tainting. So that's
Yes.
a big issue because most of the ones you find on the market have not been third party tested. So you always have to look for that GMP. Is there one that you can recommend?
I mean, there's so many good ones. The brands like Barleans or Carlson's, they make some liquid ones are very good. We make one on our Fit Mother store that is molecularly distilled, has vitamin E to stabilize it. You test it for like the lowest levels by International Fish Oil Safety, IFOS. It's like, it meets like European standards. So there are good encapsulated products if you like those. I actually think the liquid ones are probably the best, especially cod liver oil, but we make a really good enteric coated super omega-3. So that's on the Fit Mother or Fit Father store.
I didn't know that you had a supplement line. So good. I'm
We
glad.
do. Super omega-3 is on Fit Mother or Fit Father store.
Okay.
Next one that I think is really helpful to talk about is magnesium.
Yeah.
Magnesium is a very important mineral that is a cofactor in 400 different biochemical reactions,
Yeah.
ATP, relaxing the nervous system, blood pressure. You want to look up, and this is something that we do in our programs, is we teach you the magnesium-rich foods. You want to eat more of those generally, period, but it can be helpful to supplement because people are so freaking deficient, and it can help a lot. And so there's many good ways to get magnesium supplements, but that is one definitely to look at if you're not taking one. And then for the sake of time, I'll just want to blast through a couple more of these that I think are helpful. Creatine monohydrate, actually something I blanket statement recommend for everyone, basically of all ages.
Yeah.
It increases energy production. It's good for brain function. It's good for muscle mass and preserving muscle mass. 3 to 5 grams a day for pretty much your whole life is safe, well tolerated, and just generally beneficial. We have a creatine phosphate energy system, and you feed that with creatine, you perform better, period, end of story.
Yes, and some people get digestive upsets, so they have to titrate. So
Yes.
start small, see how your body absorbs and use and does not react. That's the key thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for sarcopenia, which is one of the biggest challenges of people over 40, and even if they're working out, some people still cannot.
Yes.
If they're on Ozempic or any of the semaglutides, guess what? You're going to lose muscle. So you've got to be counteracting that with weightlifting, weight-bearing exercises, and creatine.
Yes.
And protein powder, which we didn't really get into that today.
I make one. I think protein powder is one of the best tools. I have at least a scoop a day, and it's by no means necessary, but it's super, super helpful because it just helps get that protein target up. And you want to get a clean protein powder that if it's coming from whey sources, it's super well tested, coming from plant-based sources, heavy metal tested. We make our own called Super Fuel. And here's what I did. I included a low dose active B vitamin multivitamin with some greens powder, with some enzymes, with some probiotics in the superfuel. So you get like 20 grams of protein with all these things. That was my solution to be like, people need a little boost to the micronutrients and also they want the protein. There's many good proteins, but I recommend it. It's a really good way to do things. And then I don't say people need to take probiotics, but if you have digestive issues, you could take a probiotic supplement for some time and that could move the needle. Personally, I like to think of it more as like, how can I get a probiotic living food in my diet and also eat enough prebiotic probiotic fiber from the fruits and vegetables, but a
Yeah.
probiotic supplement can be indicated. And then there's other good things that are icing on the cake, like a natural anti-inflammatory like curcumin or
Yeah.
ginger. These are generally helpful. But like, I think that's like the core staple ones that are really helpful for people.
I love what you're saying. And actually, the other day when I went to the Good Earth, which is what a boutique chain here, we only have two of them, but they have some of the highest quality. But I picked up fresh turmeric and fresh ginger.
Yes.
And I honestly, I think people should be aware that those are available. And yeah, you can. I take the supplements of
Mhm.
curcumin and turmeric as well,
Mhm.
and I drink ginger tea and all that.
Me too.
But yeah, but I think that eating it fresh and putting it in your stir fries or whatever,
Yes.
also a very, very helpful way to get rid of inflammation. And
Nailed it. You keep it in your fridge. It's part of your grocery shopping. Just get the ginger, at least the ginger. I mean, the turmeric is also amazing too. I juice it occasionally, but if ginger becomes a part of your grocery haul and you just
yeah,
start layering it in foods,
yeah.
it's a digestive aid, helps you break down your meals better. Anytime you're sick, you can actually just eat it or make a tea from it, and it actually helps on that front. So, really brilliant functional food.
So one last thing, and then I want to we're going to have to close. But intermittent fasting. Let's just touch on that for a moment. What do you think about it? Are your members using it, and what kind of results have they had?
I am a very big proponent of it in context. We have incorporated it in the program over the last 10 years in many different formats. When we help people establish nutrition, we teach them about the different formats of intermittent fasting. There is like daily time restricted eating, which can be very helpful from a convenience standpoint, like the 16/8 style formats. We do
Right.
not say anyone needs to do that, but it could be a very good convenience tool for some people.
Yeah.
We do advocate a 24-hour or 36-hour fast once a week, which
Yeah.
could be as simple as a dinner to dinner fast or a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And as people get more advanced, we do introduce them to longer fasting protocols, like a 72-hour fast or a prolonged style fast to really get into a deeper autophagy state. And the general take is that our bodies need a balance between fasting and feeding. And when we get into a truly fasted state, which is a longer fast, not just the daily, 16-hour fast, a deeper fast cleans out all that cellular garbage,
Yeah.
stimulates new mitochondria production, actually leads to many different kind of detox pathways. It's essential for longevity. It's the yin and the yang. We're balancing factors. We need to be able to get into a fasted state. So yes, that is inherent to our protocols. The experiences people have, more weight loss, more energy, more clarity of thinking, realigned relationship with food, where they've also realized their cravings, increased discipline. It can be tied with spiritual practices, which seems to be very powerful, and you just feel clean and light. So very,
Yeah.
very helpful.
And you mentioned Prolon. So Dr. Joseph Anton, the CEO, was on our show, and
Yeah.
I give him a plug for a moment. If people are not aware of Prolon, have a look at their website. It's a way to do fasting with food that has been scientifically proven to work. And what's his name? Walter Longo.
Walter Longo is the researcher behind that, and yeah, I've met and talked with Dr. Joseph Anton a few times. It's like a 5-day fasting kit with some food that helps
Right.
you do a deeper fast. But if you're just starting, try a dinner to dinner fast. Once a week would be great.
The dinner to dinner, but I do the 16/8. So I stop eating, let's say it's 7. Then I haven't eaten yet today. So when we
Mhm.
get off, will be my first meal. So that's probably 17 hours. So,
Yeah,
but Dr.
yeah.
Anton said be careful about going longer than 12 or 14 hours. He thinks you start to waste your muscle after that. But I find for me, it's easy to do 16 hours.
Yes.
And then when you do eat, you feel so good because you're
Too.
eating if every morsel of that food tastes so good because you haven't been eating for a while.
Yeah.
So okay, we're out of time, but I did want you to tell our viewers, and Tony, our CEO, will flash on the screen from our distribution and production company the link to the offering that you're going to make. So if you could just tell us about that.
Well, I've talked about Fit Mother and Fit Father, and we have our programs. And as people are evaluating if, working with us and checking that out is cool, I put together a awesome 6 video series, kind of like a Netflix mini series where I do these 5-10 minute videos on important topics of health. And I have this free series that you can get sent to your email. So you can click the link associated wherever you're watching this, enter your email, and I'll send you all 6 of those videos and you can literally watch all of them. I cover a full day of eating. I give you a full workout you can do for strength training. I talk about health is related to, even your spiritual health, your mental well-being, how to be more consistent. So it's a really powerful way to come deeper and just get a lot of more free information. And if it resonates with you, then obviously we have our programs as well that you can find on our websites, fitmother.com or fitfather.com.
Okay. And then if people want to buy your supplements, can they go just buy those off your website?
Yes, they're all there on the website. They can click on the store link there and check out all of our supplements. And I'd say the one to really check out is our Super Fuel Protein is probably the best thing because it has a lot of the things we talked about in all in one.
Is it whey based or
We have whey and plant based. I personally use the plant based, but we also have some whey proteins as well.
okay, good. Okay, I'm going to check that out myself, so I'll be talking to you about that. Okay, well, gosh, we did cover a lot of ground. I'm really
We did.
excited to be able to share all this knowledge and inspire our viewers. I hope there will be people that will be contacting you on your website, or even if they wanted to get involved in the program and sign up. So, and then I'll be doing that myself. So we'll be reporting back in about
Love
6.
it.
I know it's only 6 weeks, but we can do a little
Yeah.
longer because that I think with people who are already into fitness and wellness, it might take longer. You won't see the weight loss and all that so quickly because you don't have that much to lose, but you will feel the difference. I know that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. Have a beautiful weekend. And I just appreciate the time you've taken and your knowledge and your enthusiasm. And if anybody wants to go beyond this, look at him on the internet because he's made so many videos for all of us to not only enjoy, but to learn. So take care.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right. Bye-bye.